If you are new to triathlon and you want to go into events, what is the absolute minimum that you need to have? Watch on to find out more. Hey, how's it going? I'm Will from Iron Will Multisport Australia, your place to find tips, tricks and experience in triathlon's multisport and endurance events and training. Every triathlete has started from nothing, and along the way they've had to pick up everything that they need for events, and also a fair bit that they just want. Not all gear is essential, not all gear is helpful. Depends on who you are and what you're training for, what you actually need to do. But for events, there is a minimum set of gear that you need to be able to comply with the race rules. In Australia, this is outlined in the Triathlon Australia race competition rules. And please note, if you're not in Australia, please double check your rules with your local authority. Your rules for your country, your area, or whatever may be different. So please don't take what I say as verbatim if you're not in Australia. So what is the essential gear that you need? For the swim leg, there isn't actually that much in the way of rules for minimum amount of gear that you need. What it does say is that you're not allowed to have any sort of deliberate nudity that might be seen in public, and that you must be wearing something which is compliant with the TARCR rules. So that's the Triathlon Australia race competition rules. Additionally, in the transition section, it says that you can have a bare torso when coming from the swim leg to the transition area, and or from the transition area to a secondary swim. So what this hints at is that really you can get away with wearing budgie smugglers if you really want to. Australia is the land of the budgie smuggler, so if you want to go for that, be proud and wear them out loud. What I typically wear is the slightly longer swimmers, the ones which go just down your leg a little bit, or if I'm doing the triathlon, I'll wear triathlon shorts and a triathlon top. What you need to make sure doesn't happen though is that your swimmers have any element of polyurethane or the floaty sort of neoprene material that brings you up to the surface of the water. You can't have excess buoyancy in what you're wearing. So no floaty wetsuit material unless wetsuits are allowed. And talking about wetsuits, if the temperature gets below a certain amount, I think it's about 22 degrees centigrade, then wetsuits become optional. This doesn't mean that you have to wear a wetsuit though. You can still get away without wearing a wetsuit. Depending on the category that you're racing in, if the temperature drops below 16 to 14 degrees, then the wetsuit becomes mandatory. Now, wetsuits aren't that cheap. This one cost me about $600 or so, but they can add a little bit of extra buoyancy and as such allow you to swim easier and faster through the water. And if you can't afford a wetsuit, there are certain places where you can rent them. Although be aware that other people have worn those wetsuits and potentially gone to the bathroom in them. But because of the even slight advantage that a wetsuit can give me in terms of speed, I will opt to wear a wetsuit whenever possible. When you enter into races, you will be given a certain cap with a certain colour. And this needs to be worn for the entire time that you're swimming. Normally this is a fluorescent colour, but it can also be a dark colour. I actually quite like the fluorescent colours. This is the one I had for my last triathlon. And so because this is a mandatory item for events, it can be quite helpful to practice swimming in a cap so that you get used to the idea of wearing one. Another optional item for the swim, which it doesn't actually mention the rules at all, is goggles. But for the reasons of safety and clarity, I would recommend always going goggles. For the bike, one of the most important things, of course, is to have a bike. To go cycling, you need to have a bicycle. It goes hand in hand. For shorter events, you may be able to get away with using a mountain bike or a hybrid bike. But for races, you're better off getting a road bike or a triathlon bike. And check with the local rules. Some races will make it mandatory to have at least a road bike. And according to the triathlon rules, in all Australian triathlons, you cannot use fixies, so you can't use bikes that have a fixed wheel where you can't actually freewheel. Another really important item, and an item that is absolutely required for every race and training that you do on the bike, is a helmet. Your helmet must be done up tight and the straps must be unaltered. When you are entering the transition area, most of the time, every time that I've entered a transition area, they will check your helmet to make sure that it's done up correctly. When I did the Nepean Triathlon this last weekend, they actually asked me to do the straps up even closer to my ears so that it added that extra safety to it. And any time that you are wheeling your bike around in transition, you need to be wearing your helmet that whole time. Otherwise, you may get a disqualification. Do not get caught out for having your helmet off your head too soon, or not having your helmet on your head soon enough. A good habit here is just when you go from T1 is first thing, put your helmet on. When you're going into T2, your helmet should be one of the last things that comes off. Also, from this point onwards, from the transition 1 onwards, as long as you don't have a swim in the next leg, you need to have something covering your torso. So no ripping that shirt off like you're David Hasselhoff. In the rules, you're allowed to have a zip down to your sternum only. If it goes any further below, you may be disqualified. Which is why triathlon tops only have zips that go down to a certain point. It's down to the legal limit. Another essential item for the bike leg is that you need to have appropriate footwear. It doesn't outline what the hell appropriate footwear means, so this could be bike shoes or triathlon shoes, or even your favorite runners. In the bike leg in some races, they will make it mandatory to show your race number around your body. So you may have to have your race number attached to, say, a race belt, or pin it to your torso somewhere so that you can be identified. Now finally, the run, the last leg of the triathlon. In the run, as with in the cycle, it is mandatory to have appropriate footwear. So unfortunately, you cannot run a triathlon barefoot. I run in Vibram 5 fingers. This means that you have the natural running style of barefoot, but you do have something covering your feet. And these are 100% allowed. You may take a little bit longer to get them on, since you have to get your toes into each sock hole and then into each shoe hole, but I thoroughly think it's worth it. But that's just me, each person to their own. Another carryover from the bike is that you need to have something covering your torso. And again, similarly as per the bike, you can have a zip on there, but you can't have that zip done past your sternum. And once again, you do actually need to have your race number on you. And what I didn't know is that you actually need to have your race number on your front, according to the race rules. Now this isn't policed that much. In the last triathlon I did, probably 95% of the entrants had their race number on their back on a race belt. But if they wanted to, they could pull you up on this. So that's it. That is all the essentials that you actually need in order to compete in triathlons. So as a quick summary, for the swim, you need to have something that you're wearing. You can't have nudity. You also have to wear the swim cap that's provided as part of the race to show what age group or what section of the race you're entering. And if the temperature gets below a certain point, you do have to wear a wetsuit. For the bike leg, you need to make sure that you have a bike. You also have a helmet, and in some races it may be determined as to what sort of bike you can actually ride. You also need to have something appropriate covering your feet and have something covering your torso at all times. Again, also no nudity, so you do need to wear something covering your genitals as well. Lastly, for the run, it's very similar to the bike. You need to make sure that you have something appropriate covering your feet, something appropriate covering your torso, this can be undone only down to your sternum, and to have your race number on your front. Some other very useful items I find, of course, is to have a watch of some sort or some sort of tracking device that will track how fast you're running or cycling and or swimming. This can be very useful as a training tool so that you can analyze how you're going and be able to make improvements. For the swim, it is optional, but I would say it is very useful to have a pair of goggles. I've mentioned a race belt a couple of times. That's because I find this is a very useful tool. Rather than having to pin your number onto your jersey or whatever, instead of that, you can just have your number on a race belt, and when you get into transition, just clip your race belt on and go. And with this, if you get told that you need to bring your race number around to your front, with a race belt, that's nice and easy. If it's pinned to your jersey and it's pinned to your back, that could be a little harder. Another very important element that I would always take with me when I'm doing a triathlon is nutrition. Having gels, electrolytes, that sort of thing, carrying them with you is very important. What sort of gear do you find essential for use in triathlons? Leave a comment in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching, hit that like button and subscribe, that would be awesome. I will see you in the next one. Cheerio!